Hi, this is Randy Kirk, and I wanted to do a follow-up on yesterday's video about the economy. I wanted to specifically speak to the real estate market because, it's a huge part of what's going on, and it is a lagging indicator, especially with regard to rents. And I do have a lot of background in this area. Let's get into it. If you like this kind of content, if it's helpful to you, if it's valuable to you, please like. And I'm just really encouraging people to get involved in Patreon because we're going to do some really fun things over on Patreon. I'd like to have you be a part of it. So let's talk about the real estate market. First of all, let me just give you a little bona fides, give you some idea of why I think I might know something about this category. In the 15 years since I become a consultant, one of my primary clients is a mortgage lender. He is one of the top mortgage lenders in the country. And I have been doing a lot of research for him. I've just finished writing a book with him. I've also written a second book on real estate with a realtor several years ago who was in the top 1% of all the realtors in the country. I think his last year he did 40 million in sales. So I've been working, researching and really delving into a lot of information about real estate for over 15 years now. At the level of needing to write a couple of books about it. So with that said, let me give you some of my thoughts about where we are in the real estate market right now and why that might be important to Tesla, why that might be important to your own portfolio outside of Tesla, why it is super important to the economy. So let's take a look. Number one, we've never had a situation like this before in any kind of economy, in terms of the number of people that own homes and the amount of equity that they have in their homes. 40% of the homes that are owned by individuals in the United States today are 100% free and clear. That's a shocking number. You may be shocked by it, maybe you're not shocked by it, but it is really an incredible number. In addition to that, because of Dodd-Frank and because of the bank lending policies of the last 10 years, after the big crash in 2008, the banks tightened up, and as a result of that, the amount of equity that people have in the homes where they do have a loan is at record highs. So people have a huge percentage of equity in their homes, even if they don't own it outright, they have large amounts of equity in their homes. The number three thing is there's almost zero, when I say almost zero, there's among the lowest times in history in terms of the number of foreclosures right now. That would be obvious when you have a 3.5% unemployment rate that has been consistently under 4% for a very long time, and you have people with high equity in their homes. So when you combine those two together, it's not surprising that there's almost no foreclosures as a percentage compared to historical figures. There's almost no foreclosures. The housing prices have come down. I was just in a meeting discussing this a few minutes ago, and it appears that most of the drop in housing prices happened last fall, and that the prices dropped 10 to 15%. Now, your area may be 20%, 25%, your area may be 5%. I looked at three homes this morning on Zillow. One of them had hardly dropped at all, and the other two homes had dropped about 15%. So I think the number is probably pretty realistic. Now, for homes to drop 15% is not, you may be sad that your house is worth 15% less. It does create opportunities for buying. But the reality is that most housing, when housing goes down in a recession, typically goes down a lot more than 15%. And this 15% drop is coming off of really extreme highs, where there were 5, 6, 7 people, 10 people sometimes bidding up the prices of homes. And there was a great bidding war for anything that was a decent home. So kind of like Tesla, which went crazy high and then came down a ton. In this particular case, housing went up really high, but it's only come down 15%. So why is it that prices have only come down 15%? And why is it that I think that they're not going to come down much more? In fact, we're now sliding into spring buying season. That would indicate typically that there's going to be more buying pressure. And the only way that you can relieve buying pressure is if there's if there is availability of lots of inventory to purchase. Well, there isn't lots of inventory. In fact, we're at historic lows in terms of inventory. We've been at historic lows for years. I would say, just off the top of my head, I want to say that it's been 5 or 6 years now that we've had historic lows, and they just keep getting worse. And those historic figures in terms of inventory are on single-family residences, and the reasons for that are several. Number one is old folks like me are not selling their homes. In fact, not only are they not selling their homes, they're commonly purchasing second homes for rental or for retirement or for vacation homes. And so you have a lot of folks that are sitting on homes that are just not going to sell them, or are giving them to their kids in their trusts. In addition to that, people who are selling homes right now, people in that age category, say over 60 years old, that are thinking that they want to sell their home, they're commonly engaging in exchanges rather than outright sales because they don't want to pay the capital gains. They've got $1 million or $500,000 in gains, and they're going to have to pay capital gains. Anything, if you're a single person, anything over 250,000, you're paying capital gains taxes. So people are not wanting to sell because they don't want to pay the capital gains tax. The other thing is nobody wants to sell right now because they are sitting on 2 and 3% loans. And why would you want to sell an existing house on a 2 or 3% loan and then potentially buy one at a 5 or 6% loan? That makes no sense. So people are not selling homes in that situation. They would rather rent that home out if they do have to move rather than sell. Now then, the other side of the coin is, okay, what's going to happen going into spring? Well, going into spring, the interest rates are coming down. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, if you haven't seen it, you may want to check it out. In yesterday's video, I talked about the fact that the bond market is not agreeing with the Fed with regard to interest rates. So you have 10 years that are still sitting at 3.5. Well, if you got a 3.5 10-year, typically that's going to result in a 5.5, maybe even a little under 5.5% mortgage rate. And we're still sitting closer to 6% mortgage rate. So there's room for mortgages to move down even with the current bond prices. And there's no evidence at all that bond prices are going to continue up. If you misunderstood what I just said, bond prices determine mortgage rates, not Fed rates. Bond rates determine mortgage rates. So keep your eye on the bond rates, especially the 10-year, to determine where mortgages are going. And also in this particular environment to determine what the bond purchasers believe with regard to inflation. And what they believe is inflation is over, or darn near over, or at least heading back to the 2% level that the Fed is desiring that we stand at. The odds are, in my particular feeling, is that we're going into deflation. We're not going to be stopping at a 2% inflation rate, but dropping to 1, maybe even flat, maybe even going into deflation, which would result in bond rates dropping further, possibly even back down into the 2s and under 2%, which would be mortgages could come back even into the 3s. So when you have no inventory and you have mortgage rates coming down, what that generally means is you're going to have people fighting over properties again, especially the best properties. That means we're probably not going to see further deterioration in the real estate market. It means we're probably going to see continued inflation in the real estate market, although probably at less of a rate. They won't be going up as fast as they were in the past few years. Now, what does that mean for the economy? If interest rates are coming down, mortgage rates in particular, and if housing is that tight, that means that they're going to start building more houses. Already you're seeing some appreciation in the stocks in the housing world, and that would give evidence that people believe what I'm saying. So if there's going to be a building boom, at least something close to a building boom in housing, that's going to create jobs in construction, which is usually a good thing for the economy in general. Gives more. We already don't have enough people to work, so is it a good thing or a bad thing? But I don't think it's going to cause dramatic inflation. So That's the last thing in this story. The last thing in this story is that apartment buildings, or apartment units or rental units, are being built at a pretty good clip. Still not enough to really solve the shortage that we've had for years and years and years in the number of rental units, but it is at least beginning to go in that direction, which should create something of a relaxation in rents. And that is the last number that the Fed really has to look at in terms of what is still inflating. They're seeing that rents are continuing to inflate month over month. If the rents start to level off, which they might, there's some evidence they already are, and especially if some of these new units come online, creating more supply, that would potentially cause rents to flatten out or maybe even go down a little bit. That would be a real clear evidence to the Fed, but also to everybody else that maybe the inflation problem is over. Long-term, the inflation problem might really be over. We might be going into deflation, which is a good thing if it's caused by technological advance. The best thing that can happen in any economy is for the economy to become more efficient. Efficiency shows up in profits. If profits are strong, it's generally an indication of efficiency. If we become more efficient, and when we have not enough employees, there's an inclination for companies to find ways to use robots or to use tech, to use computers, to use AI, all the things that we're seeing now that are coming onto the market to help companies and people become more effective and efficient. With efficiency comes wealth. With wealth comes the ability to buy luxury products and to buy products in general. So as Tesla continues to increase their effort in the Model Y and to hugely increase their potential production next year, increasing production capacity to almost 1 million additional units, I think that there's going to be plenty of demand, especially with these cost reductions that have just been put in place and the IRA. So what will that mean for Tesla? That should mean that Tesla will be able to raise prices if necessary. I know you're not going to hear this from anybody else. Nobody's talking about this. Tesla will only raise prices next year if necessary. What are the two necessary ingredients for raising prices? If they are not making those 30% margins, I have a feeling that that's Elon's kind of sweet spot, is around 30%. So if they're not making those 30% margins on average, then as the economy improves and as the purchases improve, then I think there'll be a raise in price. Maybe it's 1,000 here and 1,000 there. It might be by model number, and it might be by territory, and it might be in this territory and not in that territory, but trying to get back up to around that 30% level. And the other reason would be, as last time, if these low prices now result in huge backlogs of orders and people starting to flip the cars, I'm 100% sure Elon will raise prices again so that Tesla is making those profits rather than car flippers. So there you have it. This is one of the most unusual recessions in history. If it was a recession, full employment, housing only coming down a little bit, wages not going up huge, in fact, not keeping up with the short-term blip in inflation that we had. Stock market only down, it's down, but it's not down huge. This is not a normal, and bond market now, even under the pressure of the Fed, holding at 3.5. Very, very, very unusual economy, but maybe poised for dramatic improvement. If you've stayed with me this long, let me just leave you with one last thing. I am interviewing Warren Redlich this afternoon. We're going to talk about tomorrow's earnings report and the earnings call. We're going to talk about some of the questions we'd love to hear tomorrow, what we think the answers to some of those questions might be. And boy, I want to talk about the new truck factory, don't you? I'll do a video on that either later today or tomorrow or the next day, depending on what I can learn about this truck factory. At this point, we don't know a lot. But as we pick up more information, enough for me to make a video, I'll do that as well. If this has been useful, please like, please join Patreon. Hey, it's been great talking to you.